Hello, everyone. Good morning, or maybe it's a good afternoon for those of you who might be joining us from out east. But we certainly want to welcome everyone, whether you're visiting with us here in person, or maybe from one of our other campuses, or of course, for the many of you who are voting. I'm not voting. Oh, we're not going to be doing that today, I promise. No voting whatsoever. Visiting with us online. That was going to be my opening joke. Thanks. We are very, very glad you're with us here today at our church family meeting. And what I'm going to do is ask Rusty Bland, who is one of our executive council members, if he'd go ahead and open us up in prayer today. Rusty?
Heavenly Father, God, we are so thankful for this day. We're thankful for this church and how you've been moving through it. God, we rejoice as we think about the ways that you've been working in us and through us. And so we come to you in great humility this morning. We come to you with grateful hearts. We pray that your presence would be in the midst of all that we say and do. And God, we especially just want to, as we pray for the days ahead, God, we want to see more of you in us and through us in this community and in the people that are hurting and struggling, the least of these that are finding refuge here at our church. I pray for the staff, God. I pray that you would continue to reveal your great love to their hearts and help them to lead us well. And we thank you for them. Pray your blessings over this time, and we'll give you the glory and honor in all of it. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Rusty. So for some of you who might be joining us for the very first time, why do we have church family meetings? This has become a regular event for us. And the real reason, just very easily, is to make sure that everyone in our congregation is well informed about what's going on in the church. We want to make sure that you're informed about plans for the future, what's going on today. Obviously, a lot of things happening because of COVID. We want to make sure you're updated on that. And it's also an opportunity for you to ask questions. It's very important for us to get feedback from you, to make sure that we have clarity in how we're communicating to you, and just give you an opportunity to ask us questions. So that's what we want to do today. We have a very full agenda. As you see it pop up here, we're going to, Jeff's going to provide us an update from his perspective. We'll get campus updates. We're going to have some ministry highlights, which are always fun to hear. We'll get an update on the Shepherd's Heart expansion and a financial update from Abe. And again, we're going to end the session with questions, a good question and answer time, and we want you to start thinking about that right now. As you see on the screen there, if you have questions, you can go ahead and text your questions to that number, and we'll gather those up, and then we'll have an opportunity to address those at the end of the session here, and then we'll also have some opportunity for those of you who are visiting here in person to ask questions as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff for the pastor update.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Ken. I think I'm on good. Again, thanks for being here, tuning in for wherever you are. We thought, 70-degree day on a Sunday, perfect time to have a church family meeting. You all love that. Somebody asked me this week, well, what's the problem? About why have a church family meeting? They assume that you're having a church meeting because there's some issue, some problem. And I think it's worth saying there isn't an issue or problem driving this. We just think it's important for us. We talk about being a family of neighborhood churches. And families, how many of you grew up in families where you had family meetings? That's all this is, a chance to talk about what's going on, and as Ken mentioned. So we're excited to do that. I want to begin with a question that I often hear, and it has to do with how we're structured. We've met many people during this COVID season. I've met many people as we've come back inside who came to our church first online, and then came to an outdoor service, or have been exclusively online and then showed up in building in person, or have been online and haven't come at all yet. To those, if that's you, if any of you are watching, if that's you, we're glad you're part of our church family. Even if you're checking us out, we're glad that you're exploring. We hope God plants you here and you can grow and experience His grace and grow in your faith here. And I've been asked questions about, well, how does Chapel Street work? How's it structured? And we make assumptions, I think, in leadership that people know perhaps more than they do. So I want to take a minute, which we haven't done in a while, and just talk you through the organizational structure of Chapel Street Church, because people have questions about that. And so what I want to do is make you aware of how decisions are made, who oversees what areas of ministry, including me, who oversees me and how that works, and take a few minutes to show you that. So first, let's begin with the Executive Council. our executive council is the appointed board by the congregation of the church. That's there's Christ is the head of his church, and then the executive council is the oversight group underneath Christ's authority. And I sit as a part of that council and also am under the authority of that council. So you see the names of the individuals there. Was it already up and I missed it? You can put it back up if you don't mind, please, and we'll talk through those names. Tracy Barble, Chris Bates, Rusty Bland, who you just heard from a moment ago, Kim Erickson, me, Sean Glore, Frank Valentini, Tony Valente, and Scott Salvati, and Ken O'Brien. Those are the voting members of the Executive Council. We have 2 open positions right now. Those are open because Alan Duncan and Mike Leone have moved away, wonderful people who served faithfully, and we love them and we'll miss them, but have moved away, and so we're looking to fill those positions, and we'll talk more about that in the weeks and months to come. John Bechtel, who to my right, and Abe Doncel on the other end to my left, are members of our senior leadership team on staff. They also sit on that council as non-voting members. So there's more than just me as a staff member on that council. This group serves, if you're on that council, you serve a 3-year term. It's renewable 3 times, right, Ken? You could serve 2 times, 6 years. Are you sure you can't keep serving? And then you have to rotate off for a year. I'm profoundly grateful for these men and women, and I pray for them. And I want you to know as church family, you should be grateful for them and pray for them as well. It's a huge encouragement to me to have them in leadership and support. They are responsible, what this council does, to set the parameters and boundaries under which I lead and our staff operates. So they set the financial boundaries, they set the spiritual boundaries, they set the operational and behavioral boundaries and parameters under which we then try to move the ministry forward to achieve the mission God has given us. They also are responsible to work with me on setting and establishing the vision and direction of our church strategically and spiritually, and I'm very, very grateful for their impact and input in that area. So I just wanted you to know who they are and how they work and what they do. A subset of that group is called the Pastoral Relations Committee. I often get asked this question by people that are newer to our church, and perhaps some of you are in this category who have come to us from churches that have had failures of those in senior leadership, which is a great tragedy, and we grieve that. And often people that come here from that perspective want to know, who's in charge of you, Pastor Jeff? Who do you report to? Who oversees you? And the Executive Council is the overarching committee, but a subset of that group called the Pastoral Relations Committee meets with me monthly, and they ask me questions about my personal life and growth and professionally. It's not just accountability, it's also great encouragement and support. So I wanted you to see that as well. That group, some of which are represented here on the stage and some are here with us in person, but that meets with me monthly, and that committee is appointed by the Executive Council for that purpose, to meet with me, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So, and Ken, you want to chime in on that? Anything you want to say about that?
Well, I think there we go. It is certainly an important part of not just governance, but support of the pastor. And we take that very seriously. But I should also add that we encourage Jeff to have other outside individuals that he communicates with and gets counsel from, even what we might call an accountability group. And Jeff has that in place as well. We do think that's incredibly important. There's a lot of pressures on Jeff. And we just think his spiritual health, his mental health, his physical health, all those things are incredibly important for us as a body. And so that is where the focus is.
Thanks. Not just for me, for our whole staff as well, but I do appreciate that. I do have an accountability group, and I do have a pastor's cohort. So I'm glad they want me to have friends. That's nice. And I do. And I feel very, very supported. Okay, moving on to our staff. This large image you'll see on the screen now looks like a very complex chemical compound. This image, that's a representation of how our staff is organized. There's lots of ways to draw an organizational structure. I didn't want to draw this for you or show it to you top down because that's not how we operate predominantly, but it represents where things are placed. And so there's 3 main areas. If you keep that image up there, please. There's 3 main areas. Operations, which you see Executive Director of Operations there, ministries, and then the lead pastor. 3 main categories, if you will, how we operate. So the next slide then, we'll go to our senior leadership team. These are staff members. I lead this group. Abe Doncel, and you'll see those 2 below me there, Abe and John. These are the 3 areas I just mentioned that were in those circles. And then Jenny Caterer, she's my administrative assistant, but her role is so much more significant than that. If you know Jenny, you know how capable and competent she is. Her role is the director of the office of the lead pastor, which means what it says. She helps me stay on track, but administrates so many important aspects of church leadership that come out of the office of the lead pastor. Then the next, we'll just talk through each of those circles in organizational charts, our campus pastors. Our campus pastors, Brian Coffey of our South Street campus, who you'll hear from in a few minutes, Sterling Moore at Mill Creek, Andrew Griffiths has been named but not yet functioning as our fourth campus pastor in North Aurora. We'll have more to talk about that in a few minutes. And then Stetson Butler, who is our pastor of online engagement. But really that functions as a kind of a digital campus for us, and that's why we're including him there. Those individuals report to me in that function. They may have other roles that they play on the staff, but they report to me in those capacities as campus leaders. Okay? The next image is our South Street campus, so we'll just talk through these. Pastor Brian Coffey oversees the spiritual health and vitality and direction of our South Street campus in addition to his other duties. And on his team for the South Street campus are Kenton Kober and Laura Chavez in worship and in children's ministry, kids ministry. Then our Mill Creek campus. Pastor Sterling Moore, again, oversees the spiritual health and growth and direction of our Mill Creek campus. And his team in the area of worship are Eric Elfman, Ali Goebel, and then Julie Hartsock, Libby Tate, and Mandy Williams in connections, administration, and Chapel Street Kids for Mill Creek. That's his staff team over there. I know we're going fast through this, but you can go back and rewatch this if you'd like to. I just want you to see where everything fits, because many of you are new, and even those of us who aren't as new here, sometimes we've changed a lot over the last few years. It's good to revisit all this and understand. Our North Aurora campus, which again is not yet functioning as a campus, but God willing will be soon. Andrew Griffiths will be the campus pastor there. We have not yet named or hired a worship leader, but we're working on that. And Jen Lindsay, who's on our Chapel Street Kids team at Kesslinger campus, is going to be the Chapel Street Kids director there, and we're thrilled about that. She'll do a fantastic job, as she already is at Kesslinger. And I know that Becky Chenault is both excited and sad to lose her from her team, but you really don't lose her. It's an addition to one of our campuses. Kesslinger campus, we anticipate the day when there'll be an individual campus pastor here that's not me as the lead pastor. But for now, I'm functioning as the campus pastor as well as the lead pastor in a dual role there. Anton Campare is the director of worship here at Kesslinger, as you know, and Becky Chenault, director of Chapel Street Kids. And Becky's really a coach to all of our Chapel Street Kids leaders across the campuses. The next department, leadership and development. This is the area that Brian leads outside of South Street. So some of us on staff have dual roles and functions. So Brian Coffey, Pastor of Leadership and Development, was the title we developed for him, or he developed in the transition plan. Paige Peltier, Joe Scavato, and Kelly Wick worked with him in the area of marriage ministries, in the area of group, not so much groups, but our Leadership Institute and leadership development areas there. And so there's a lot happening there that isn't directly part of South Street that Brian oversees. Next is worship. Worship as a department across all of our campus is led by Pastor Kenton Kober. So he oversees and coaches our worship leaders at the various campuses. And this is important to say, and I know that this is easy to say and hard to do. We use the phrase, there's a dotted line to Pastor Kenton for our worship leaders and a straight line to their campus pastors. So for example, Ali Goebel reports to Sterling Moore as part of Mill Creek campus. But she has a dotted line to Kenton, who helps resource her, coach her, and develop her as a worship leader. That's true across not just worship, but in Chapel Street Kids and other areas. That's our worship ministries department. Local and global impact. Now we're moving out of the areas that I oversee into the areas that Pastor John Bechtel oversees in our ministries area. So Pastor Bruce McAvoy oversees all of our local and global impact. That is a massive department. Our Shepherd's Heart ministry, our Serve the World, there's a lot of resources and impact happening there that he oversees, and he reports up through Pastor John Bechtel. On his team, Joanna Anarino, Janae Griffiths, Lisa Smarto, and Aaron Wise. Just in case you're wondering where everybody fits, we're talking through it. Next, and again, we're going quickly here, our Chapel Street students, again, reporting up to Pastor John Bechtel, Gretchen Gilbert, Andrew Griffiths, Beth Miller, Tom Ward. They report they serve to lead the students' teams and their respective roles and report up to Pastor John. Next, Chapel Street Kids, also under Pastor John's direction and supervision, Becky Chenault, director of Chapel Street Kids, and on her team, Laura Chavez, Heidi Doncel, Brenda Jackson, Jen Lindsay, and Libby Tate. Next, our Masterpiece Ministries. Chris Duffy If you haven't met Chris, come meet him. You'll be surprised. He doesn't look like what you think the director of Masterpiece Ministries looks like, but he's a fantastic and humble leader and doing a remarkable job there. He has stepped in, filled in the shoes of Jamie Valentini, who's still involved but no longer on staff, and so we're thrilled to have Chris in that role and Masterpiece Ministries, and looking forward to the day when we can begin more in-person ministry to those precious kids and adults. Women's ministry, again reporting to John Bechtel, Lorene Coffey, director of Chapel Street Women, and her team, Tiffany Douglas, Michelle Claceris, and Kristen Streepy. Have done a remarkable job trying to figure out how to reach young moms, lead women's Bible study, reach out to women during this COVID time, and that's that department. Moving right along, the care ministry. These are our care groups. There's a whole range of ministries underneath the care umbrella. John Hookinga, director of care ministries, and Julie Robertson works alongside him in helping to administrate and direct those groups as well. Groups and connections. This is a rapidly growing area of our ministry, of our church family, I should say. Paige Peltier is director of Chapel Street Groups. This means our rooted groups, our life groups, that track along with sermon discussion. She's done a great job. Some of these are meeting in person. Many of these are meeting virtually or some combination. If you're not already in a Chapel Street group, I want to encourage you, consider signing up for those. Reach out to us. We'd love to place you in community. I think now more than ever, we need each other to be in community. And so Paige leads that area. Heidi Doncel, Joe Scavato. Joe is our pastoral resident, as many of you know. He's functioning in a couple of areas as the venue leader for our Saturday night service and as an associate in Chapel Street Groups as the next stage of his development. And he's doing a fantastic job there. And Carrie Van Rossum is just an endless source of energy and joy as she seeks to connect people in our church family across our campuses and helps that happen not just at Kesslinger, but all of our campuses. Okay, moving into operations. Some of you, if you're checking out now, let me just, hey, wake back up. Stay with us. This is exciting and fun stuff. We want to keep you dialed in. We're talking about how our church is structured. So now we're moving out of Pastor John's area into operations. All the infrastructure that makes the church run smoothly, that doesn't get a lot of credit, and it's kind of like Pastor John often says, the offensive lineman of ministry. You only notice if something goes wrong. You ever watch a football game? Don't talk about the offensive lineman unless there's a flag for being offsides or holding. But most of the time, they do their job right. And so Abe leads a whole area of ministry that do so much work. And I've grown to love and appreciate them even more during COVID because they make everything run smooth. And they don't get much credit, so we want to give them some credit here. In the area of admin and IT and HR, Abe Doncel oversees Jen Gomel. Jen is the manager of administration and really our human resources director to a degree. She does that. We should change that title. She does so much more than manage all of that and is invaluable to us. And on her team, and these administrators serve in other departments. So they're developed and resourced by Jen, but they serve other areas of ministry we just talked through. Sue Ann Egan, Jen Maminga, Jackie Reagans, Tammy Scala, Danielle Stombris, they each have ministry areas that they help administrate in, but they're developed and resourced and coached by Jen Gomel. Okay, our finance department, the dream team of Fred Morris and Britta Ness. If you ever watch Sesame Street and see the count, when he's counting things, that's how I refer to Fred. Fred Morris is the count. 1, 2, 3, ha, ha, ha. So anyway, if you see Fred, call him the count. He'll appreciate that. He's our financial controller and just a remarkable man doing a remarkable job, and his boss, Britta Ness. Only kidding. But Britta and Fred are really a great team. Abe can vouch for that. Our facilities area. These folks only get the brunt of everybody else's frustration, but they do a tremendous job with 3, soon to be 4 campuses. They're stretched thin, but doing a fantastic job, and we're working to add to this team. James Chavez, manager of facilities, DeWitt Abagaz, Alan Cavender, and Reed Plinsky are on his team, and we're very, very grateful for them. Safety and security. It's a one-man band. This is a new area of emphasis. When John Harper was with us, he's now with the Lord. When he was with us, he talked often about developing safety and security, and we had dipped our toe in the water. And under Abe's direction, we now have brought somebody onto our team. Mike Abbs is recently retired from the Aurora Police Department and has joined our team as Director of Safety and Security. We could not be more happy than to have Mike with us. He's already really helping us grow in this area, and it's something that sadly needs to be in our day and age needs to be thoughtfully addressed, and he's the perfect man for the job, and we're thrilled to have him on our team. Okay, communications. As you saw a moment ago, Stetson Butler has been moved in the role of pastor of online engagement, And we had to bring somebody in behind him because he was our director of communications. And that person, by God's grace, is Marcy Campare, Anton's better half. We're thrilled to have her on our team. She's director of communications. And on her team, Hannah Cormier, Sarah Hager, Hannah Harold. And those three, by the way, are working remotely, some of them from school, doing a fantastic job with social media and design. And then Peter Hansen, Peter and his lovely wife Heather, are soon to be leaving us to join the mission field, and you've heard about that. We're thrilled about that, but we're sad to see them go. Peter's been our videographer and director of video, and we are bringing someone on behind him to replace him. We'll tell you more about that in the future. And then Jill Valentini, who we couldn't come up with a title for her because she does pretty much everything around here to make sure everything runs smoothly, but coordinates communications in really just such an efficient way. And they oversee everything online, in print, digital. There's some overlap between them and our pastor of online engagement, Stetson Butler, but they work together really and the communication needs of a large, diverse, growing organization are significant, put it that way. And they do a really great job. Okay, keep moving. Technology. I knew this would take a while, but I figured I only preached 2 sermons. I want to talk for a while. So Abe Doncel oversees Eric Robertson. Eric joined us as a worship leader here at Kesslinger. Eric is remarkably gifted in many ways, not the least of which is worship, but one of his great gifts is technology and production. And so he's over all of our tech and production, over all of our campuses. And we're working to shore up that team in other campuses as well. On his team is Stephen Ortiz. And we're close to making some hires. We're understaffed there as well, but more to come on that. Okay. Let me pause there and ask if there's anything you guys want to add to what I may have missed organizationally. No. I wanted to mention our staff by name. I wanted you to hear their names. And I also wanted you to have a quick glimpse of how we're structured, where decisions get made, where ministries fall, and how we're organized, because I know there's often questions about that. So let's talk now about our 4th campus update. So is that next on the slides? It's next in my order. Yes? Yep. Okay, good. So as you know, we voted to approve the acquisition and the plans to go forward with a remodeling and addition to our North Aurora campus. We now own that property, and we're working with our design build firm Aspen on those plans. We have a tentative launch date for basically a little less than a year from now, next fall. And we're working on the timelines for core team development, construction timelines, fundraising timelines to make sure that all syncs up and we're ready to launch publicly. We'll do ministry and outreach in the community before that on that campus, but that's our public launch date. And we want to show you now just a brief fly-through of the campus plans as they stand so far. It'll give you a kind of so what you're looking at before you do the animation, that is the existing building, an image of the existing building. Which is at the on Banbury Road across from Snyder Elementary School in North Aurora. And what you'll see is designs and fly-through for what we will plan to expand. Are we ready to do that? Let's do that. This is to the right is all new construction. And now you're virtually flying into the existing entrance. But once inside, what's now dark and narrow hallways will be completely opened up. It looks a lot like Mill Creek, and that's intentionally so, to a beautiful new lobby. We're going now out of the lobby, which is existing space, into the kids' space, new construction, multi-purpose rooms, classrooms, nursery, and meeting rooms for kids, which could be used for other things throughout the week. Lots of natural light, open air. This is one of the small group rooms for children, and it could be used for lots of things during the week. Nursery area. And now this is a picture of what is existing sanctuary, but we're going to expand it by moving the back wall backwards and changing some of the tech in that room, upgrading and updating it. So it stops there, but there's a lot more to see than that. But we're thrilled about the plans so far as they exist. As you remember, our plan for this is a not to exceed $2 million project, and we're on track for that. We're being very judicious about that. I'm excited to let you know. I don't know if we have a graphic for this or not. I don't think so. We, without even coming to the church family to ask for a dime, we already have $450,000 given toward this initiative, and more than that pledged. And so with that, I mean, just humbled and grateful to God for his provision for that. We'll be talking more in January about how you as church family can participate, should you choose to, in giving toward that initiative as we prepare for the construction there. So since we just looked at the fourth campus, I want to take a minute now and let each of our campus pastors that are operating as a campus right now give you a couple minute update on what's happening on their campuses. So without further ado, let me bring up Pastor Sterling Moore. Sterling, everybody cheer. Yay.
Rousing, thank you. Just a couple things that I wanted to make you all aware of. Our energy and time at the Mill Creek campus have focused on a few areas that really are a reflection of what we've always been focused on. We're just approaching them slightly differently in this day and age. We have reopened as a campus, as you are aware, and we have 3 services at the Mill Creek campus. There's our Saturday evening service. As Jeff mentioned, Joe Scavato, as part of his pastoral residency, is now serving as the venue leader there on Saturday night, and we really think that's going to really help grow that community, and we're excited about his leadership and direction and involvement there. We have a 9 and 10:30 service, and really, I have to thank my staff who's invested so heavily in helping that experience just really feel like Chapel Street Church Mill Creek. People gathering together to worship together. They're doing it safely. So I have just the staff team, our volunteer team who has led so effectively in that. I appreciate them so much. So of course, we're investing our time and energy into doing that well and really celebrating that. If you haven't joined us yet, of course, you are always welcome to do so. We also then are trying to oversee, or what I call congregational care, connect with our larger community. For many of our the congregation who calls Chapel Street Church Mill Creek their church home, they have not been able to join us in person for a variety of reasons. And so we're trying to find ways to remain connected, to check in, to care well for that community of people, whether that's just phone calls or emails, a time of prayer, seeing if there's somebody who currently has a need and figuring out how to meet that need. We're trying to remain connected as an entire campus in a season when that has been challenging for us to do. And so we invest a lot of time and energy in that as well. Libby Tate has done that really well with our families that have young kids, and giving them a place, knowing that they're known and they're thought of, and she's checking in with them, and I've appreciated that. And then thirdly, we've really focused on remaining connected and involved in our community. And again, as you can imagine, that has been uniquely challenging in this season. But a couple of things that have happened over the course of the last 9 months during COVID. One is that we really extended an invitation into our community to be involved with us in our Shepherd's Heart Food Pantry. Every Tuesday, there is a car in our parking lot with the trunk open, and families both from our church and from our neighborhood come and make donations to help meet the need. We found that connecting with our community around immediate needs, involving them in the support of that, has built relationships, and we're so grateful for their involvement and participation in that. We did small things, like at our first outdoor services at Mill Creek, there's a local family who owns a coffee cart, and they came over and just made wonderful coffee drinks for everybody. It was not only a blessing for us that attended worship there, but also, again, another way to remain connected in our community. And then Mandy Williams has been hard at work at developing and putting together a special event in the month of December. It will be outdoors, and it's going to be a walk-through live nativity. And we really think this is going to be a creative and engaging way to invite our neighbors and friends and the community around us to experience the story of Christmas. And in a time when it's difficult to gather together, we can do this with protocols in place for social distancing and safety, and really, again, to invite our neighborhood to experience what we're all about to hear about the incarnation of God becoming one of us in a creative and unique way. And so Mandy Williams is leading that effort. That is going to be December 11th, 12th, and 13th. There's a team of volunteers working on that. So that's really where our energy and excitement is going right now, and we're looking forward to telling more of those stories as we go forward.
Hey, Sterling, quick question.
Yep.
Are you going to have a camel?
That's okay. So Pastor Jeff asked if we're going to have a camel, and I desperately wanted a camel. But it turns out they're like $5,000 to rent. So if anybody's in the camel business and has a bargain rate for me, let me know. There will be a llama and lots of sheep.
I don't think llamas were in the nativity.
They were there. They were there, Jeff. Look it up. It's in the Bible. Pastor Brian's going to come and report on South Street.
Thank you, Sterling. Yeah.
Thanks, Sterling. Well, I just want to, first of all, say I'm humbled and excited to be asked to serve as South Street campus pastor for the coming season. It is an exciting time. It's a different time for the church, but it's an exciting time. I want to tell you a bit about our team there at South Street. We are serving together with Kenton Kober, who's our pastor of worship, but he leads specifically the worship at South Street right now. He directs our sanctuary choir when we're able to use them in services again, which I'll talk about in a minute. He's also directing the production of our online worship services for traditional worship, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes as well. Laura Chavez, as Jeff said, directs Chapel Street Kids at South Street, and we haven't had a lot of children, but we have some. And so we want to be prepared for when those families come with kids, and Laura helps with that. Sarah Pavey is our organist, and Connie Lassie has agreed to accompany on piano when she can, and if she can't, other people like my wife Lorene and others will step in and play piano for worship. We have a great team of people working in our tech ministries, which we need at that campus, led by Daniel Chin and Dave Welch, Chuck Schallenberg, Chuck Williams, Andre Ventner. All help out there, making sure our sound and video are working correctly. Ralph Lohr, once again, our head usher, and does all kinds of stuff at South Street. And he, along with our facility staff, James Chavez and others, make sure the sanctuary's clean, sanitized between all our services before and after, and we thank them for their work there. Now, there are also a host of Chapel Street staffers who are volunteering and serving as we welcome people, as we register them, and so forth. We are thankful for them as well. Now, you may or may not be aware that in our South Street Sanctuary, we have, under the COVID protocols, capacity for about 100 people in worship there on that main floor. We have had, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've been indoors at our 9 a.m. service between 60 and 70 worshipers, and at our 10:30 service between 25 and 35. Now, if you've been around Chapel Street for a long time, you can remember when the sanctuary was just stuffed full of people, chairs set up in the aisles, balcony full. Those numbers may seem discouraging, but they're not. And we can't see them as discouraging because I'll tell you that the people who are there week by week are excited and so glad and grateful to be worshiping together, even in those numbers. And that spirit sort of fills the room, and we want to build on that, and it's very, very important. So Kenton and I have talked about our plan for the upcoming year at South Street, and it's really to take a long view. We understand that this is going to be months, not weeks, that it might even be longer than months. And we need to be prepared for a nice, steady progression, rebuilding South Street traditional worship. We're starting with very simple services, familiar, recognizable hymns. We eventually will be able to add more pieces as protocols allow. Sanctuary choir, for example, instrumentation, small orchestras, that sort of thing, but that'll come in time. Right now, our focus is being as personal as possible, greeting people personally, getting to know them, making sure they know they have a church home, they have a campus pastor, they have a staff there that cares about what's happening in traditional worship, and we're just going to try to build that community as more and more people are able to join us over the next couple of months. We are not yet running the bus back and forth to the Homestad, just due to the COVID protocols that those folks are under, but we hope to at some point be able to start that bus again, and maybe even consider sending buses or a bus to other sorts of large retirement communities as well, because we want people to know there is a traditional worship option in their community. And one more thing that Kenton has worked hard to do, along with Eric Robertson and our tech staff, is putting together an online presence for traditional worship from Chapel Street. We've been online now and live streaming for months since COVID hit, but we've not had an online traditional presence as often as we've had our contemporary services online. So Kenton is putting together services every week that are being posted that involve our sanctuary choir, distanced but worshiping and leading worship, along with some instrumentation. And then the sermon gets inserted in there from Pastor Jeff or somebody else. And what we want to do there is make sure that our Chapel Street family knows that we have a traditional worship option. We don't want that service to be a secret, not only for our church family, but for the region as well, for our local community. We want people to know that there is a traditional option, that if they don't have a church home and that's their worship language, we want them to know about it. So we're encouraging our people to not only watch week by week online if they can't attend, and many cannot attend yet or don't feel comfortable, but to share those things with their neighbors, with their friends, with their people who live near them, so that those people can know that there's a service with traditional worship, and hear the messages, hear the gospel, and at some point even maybe come join us when they're able to, as we are hearing from other people throughout these months. I actually told somebody today I've probably met 3 or 4 individuals or couples who are attending at South Street, but first came to know our church family through our online presence or by attending one of our outdoor services. And this is the first time they've been inside one of our buildings and are coming to South Street, at least for right now. And that's really fun to hear. So let me use that as a transition to our pastor of online engagement, who is Stetson Butler. Stetson, come share.
Thank you, Pastor Brian. That was a great segue, because we have been hearing so many stories of how people are visiting, experiencing us for the first time online before they even enter one of our buildings. So you saved me from having to make that transition myself. Something that COVID has taught us is that our front doors of our physical campuses are no longer the first experience of somebody checking us out online or checking us out for the first time. So people are visiting us online, maybe even for weeks, for months, becoming regular attenders of Chapel Street Church before they even enter one of our physical buildings. So it's more important than ever that our online presence is an accurate reflection of who we are as a church. That it's a warm, inviting place where you can connect with people and you can understand our values of how we care about God's word, how we care about impacting our community with the gospel of Christ. So we want to do that and live that out and show that online and allow people to participate in those things. It's a little bit hard to summarize all of online engagement and what that means and what we're talking about with that in a short update. So I'm going to do my best, and I want to focus in on one thing that's really important that we do online on a weekly basis, and that is our services streamed online. When we do that, we can talk about 3 different categories. There's capture, there's delivery, and there's engagement. So when we think about capturing something online, we're talking about the videos that we're experiencing this from. So we're looking at videos right now, and we want to pay attention to how we are capturing the service so it feels good, it feels right. It's an accurate reflection of what we care about and how we're doing it online. The delivery is, where does that captured content, our service, where does it go so that people can find it? And right now, that's on Facebook, that's on YouTube, and that's on our website, which is at chapelstreet.church/live. So at those 3 places, you can tune in to our online experience and enjoy service online with your family or anybody around you or at home. And then lastly is engagement participation. We're not trying to be Netflix. We don't just want somebody to engage in a service and sit back and enjoy it for the sake of entertainment, though it will be an excellent experience. We want participation. We want people to know that they're a part of something bigger, that we are a congregation gathered to experience grace, grow in faith, and make an impact for where you are, that's what we're about, and we want you to be a part of it. So our online service is a reflection of that as well. So participation, engagement in our online services is key. So each of those areas, we have to grow in each of them, and there's so much to learn, so much that we're doing each day and each week, is a growth opportunity. And so I'm so excited to be leading the charge. Sometimes it feels like I'm building a ship adrift in the ocean, but other times it's really exciting to be figuring this out as we go. And quite honestly, we can't do this without the rest of the congregation. If we want to convey the welcoming presence that we are here at Chapel Street, we have to all be doing this. So I would encourage everybody who is tuning in online right now through this meeting, and anybody who's in the room now with us, if you are seeing things online, and engage, comment, communicate like you would somebody walking into the building for the first time that you hadn't seen yet before. Welcome them, engage them, say, hey, we haven't met yet. My name is so-and-so. I would love to see that type of activity online, and I'm going to continue to encourage that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks. Well, thank you, Stetson. Thank you to all of our campus pastors. You know, as we grow in complexity and we continue to add campuses, we know that it becomes more and more difficult to communicate all that's happening in the life of our church, particularly in our specific ministry areas. So one of the things we'd like to add to our family meetings is taking a few moments to highlight a specific ministry area. And we thought a great place to start would be with Pastor Bruce McAvoy, our pastor for Local Global Impact. So, Pastor Bruce, you come up and share with us all that's going on in your area. All of it. In 2 minutes or less.
All is impossible. But I will tell you a little bit about history. Back in 2012, so about 8 years ago, Serve the World began. Well, Serve the World began because we rebranded missions. Traditional missions, you would say. And so I want to tell you what has happened over those last 8 years, because in 2020, we reached the $3 million received point. $3 million has come in to Serve the World over the last 8 years. When we began Serve the World, our budget for missions, all of missions, was right at about $250,000. Pastor Brian had a vision and said, hey, we can do better than that, and we can get there faster by creating a unique fund in order to be generous with. And over those last 8 years, it was just this last fall that our gifts given matched that $3 million. So 100% of what you have given to Serve the World has been redistributed to over 100 ministries over the last 8 years. And a handful of those ministries have received multiple gifts. Some of those ministries are annual faithful gifts that we give in our local community to places like Riverwoods, Wayside Cross, Lazarus House, Naomi House, and a couple more. So those are important points of contact or points of reference. And I also want to tell you that over 1,700 people have given to Serve the World since 2012. Yet only a couple hundred of those 1,700 have selected reoccurring gift giving. So I was amazed that just a couple weeks ago I talked to a man that has been a part of Chapel Street for 20 years, and he didn't know that Serve the World monies come in when people like him choose to give it and choose to give it regularly. So I make that aware to you, because we don't make this incredible impact around the world without your all's generosity. So let me tell you 3 quick stories of impact over the last couple years that have been highlighted, but maybe we've failed to accurately tell you the rest of the story. Stephen's Home is a home for special needs men in the Ukraine. We gave to that last Advent, and what has happened over the last year is that laws are being rewritten in that country, and changes are being made so that men are moving into a home where they can reside for the rest of their lives that is not a state country-run orphanage where they've lived for the last 20 years. It's unbelievable. We've taken a short team trip there where we've decorated and painted and built outdoor decking and ramps for wheelchairs. It is a glorious home for men to live for the rest of their lives in a dignified place where Christ is paramount and where they will be cared for as a part of a family. 2 years ago, we told you about Hope for Life, and Hope for Life was doubling their impact in their facility. It's a home for street boys out of Rwanda. But the best part of that story is what has happened since our gift, because more boys have gone home than stayed at Hope for Life. Because the vision of the home is not an orphanage in its traditional sense as we would understand it, but it's about restoring boys to their moms and dads because they've ran to the city to get away from something toxic at home or for what they thought was a better life. And so the real special story about Hope for Life is how many boys have been restored and reintroduced to their mom or their dad or both back in a traditional home setting. Really a beautiful story. And then finally, I want to tell you about Ecuador. We've told stories about Ecuador for at least 20 years because that's how long it's been since Jeff took the first trip there some 21 years ago. But the story began in the 50s when a Chapel Street couple by the name of Bubs and Bobby Borman went to Ecuador. Bubs and Bobby went in the same year that Jim Elliott and Nate Saint went. Bubs Borman was part of the rescue team that identified the bodies of those Christian martyrs in the 1950s. Chapel Street doesn't tell that story very often, but that's a long relationship. We're in 2020, and that happened in the 1950s. And today, I want to tell you that we've got a Chapel Streeter serving there. We got a Chapel Streeter waiting to pass his COVID test to get there. We've got a couple from Chapel Street that is raising funds and will be there in 2021. And Rick Borman and his wife and family is still a part of our global team. Rick will turn 60 this year, and he has been strategically building the camp there at El Refugio that is arguably one of the greatest Christian camp and retreat centers in the entire continent of South America. That's where our impact lies. And so I tell all these stories, and there's obviously hours of more stories for me to tell you, but they are all happening because Chapel Street has truly been the tip of the spear over these last 8 years in Serve the World generosity. So thank you, thank you, thank you for making it possible to make this kind of impact around the world.
Thanks, Bruce. Pastor Bruce is not kidding. If you want to hear more stories, he could talk to you for hours about those stories, and they're fun to hear. It's a good transition now to talk to you about Shepherd's Heart. Before I do that, though, I want to pause on something Bruce said. $3 million the last 8 years in, and not just in, but out, given away to gospel ministry partners around the world. And just praise God for that. That's remarkable. And we're looking forward to many more stories because of your generosity and what God's doing. Also, you just heard from a number of our staff members. I talked through all the staff really fast. And I want to be sure that you hear me say how grateful I am and we are as a leadership team for our staff. Our staff is remarkable, and they have shouldered so much weight and difficulty and challenge during the COVID season. And I just want to say to our church family that are watching and in person how thankful and profoundly grateful we are for our staff. They're doing a remarkable job. If you see them and you get to know them, please pass on your own appreciation to them as well, because they're, like all of us, I think it was Sterling or Stetson, you said, trying to build the boat as you're sailing it or build the ship as you're flying it. Our staff is really the ones really doing that, innovating and trying to figure this out, and so grateful for them. And last thing, to follow up on that Stetson mentioned, he said that our online presence and sharing, every time you like something, you comment on something, you share something, you don't think about that as much more than just kind of engaging in social media. If you do that, it makes a difference. It makes a difference in our reach, because now all the people that are your followers see what you like and share. And it really is like concentric circles, expanding our ability to reach more people with the gospel. And so social media has its ills, no question. But one of the ways you can use it for good and for the kingdom is by liking, sharing, and commenting the things that you see coming out of Chapel Street that you do. So thanks for that, yeah. Okay, let me talk to you briefly about Shepherd's Heart expansion. It's well underway in the lower level at our South Street campus. And again, let me remind you that this project is just under $1 million, and all of this project was already funded by generous people in our church family who gave toward it. We didn't have to raise or borrow a dime. It's paid for, and we're just praising God for that. They're on track to finish that and be open by early January, I think is the date right now. So it's looking like it's on track. Construction projects never finish on time, but so far this one looks like it will. So you can hold your breath with me if you like, but pray. And you see a couple images here. This is the lower level at our South Street campus. It's hard to get oriented to where you are, but you're looking at images of what will be our marketplace for our guests and clients when they come once it's open. The next image there is just another image of the same thing, looking across the hall from our storage area into the marketplace area. And again, I can't wait for you to see that when it's finished. If you can't come by now because it's all under construction and hard hats, but when COVID begins to clear and it gets further down the construction, please stop by, say a prayer, ask for a tour. We'd love to show you what God's doing there and look forward to when that's open. It's not closed. Shepherd's Heart continues to function and run, serving over 1,400 people a month, setting records actually for the number of people. And they're operating out of our upstairs in our current student center at the South Street campus. That's where donations are going and being stored. That's where our guests are being served. And that's where we're operating out of right now. And that volunteer team is doing a remarkable job keeping things thriving while we do construction at the lower level. Okay. Now, let me move now to the Serve the World Giving Project for 2020. Bruce talked about Serve the World Giving, and it's been our tradition to have a project and a partner to highlight and to give toward every year at Advent and at Easter. We didn't do that this Easter because of COVID. We weren't sure financially where we would be, so we really are excited to talk about what's coming this Advent season, and it's our partnership with Naomi's House. Naomi's House, as a matter of fact, we did not plan to do this, but Kim, could I put you on the spot? Would you come up here and just give us a 2-minute overview of what Naomi's House actually is? Kim Erickson is the executive director of operations there of Naomi's House, and she's on our church board, so I'd love her to come and talk about that. Yeah. I did not know to do this, but I saw her sitting out there. I thought, I'd better her than me. so let's welcome Kim.
A 2-minute summary of Naomi's House. So Naomi's House exists because we believe that every woman who's been commercially sexually exploited deserves a new start. And what that means is that we serve women who primarily are born in the U.S. and trafficked in the U.S., who come out of sex trafficking. We provide them everything that they need to heal and to begin again. And it's a privilege to watch these remarkable, courageous women fight to heal and to grow. And we are so honored to be recipients of Advent Giving this year. And the primary purpose that we are hoping to use this funds for is to establish a day program. And so we are hoping to buy another site and be able to expand what we serve inside our residential program. We'll be able to do 5 times that number of women if we can reach our goal. So that is what we are praying for and what we trust that you all will partner with us for, and we're excited to see what God is doing. He's up to big things, including moving towards Kane County in the coming spring, which Jeff doesn't even know about it yet. But
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. Yep. So just in case you missed that, our project is to help raise the funds by the generosity of our church family over the course of Advent for Naomi's House to purchase a second facility, which will be a day facility. So the women are residential right now, but they can serve 5 times the number of women who maybe don't need residential but can be ministered to throughout the day. And that's what this facility will be for. It really, God's up to something, as Kim said. And what a great privilege for us to bring our resources to bear on this. So our goal is to raise $200,000 over Advent. And if you're thinking that's a lot, it is. But if you might remember, we set a goal of $70,000 for Life Water, and our church family gave almost $210,000. So it's well within our ability as a church family to give to this very, very worthy cause and to make that possible. So, and what that means is we'll be highlighting and telling you stories of impact out of Naomi's House, the story of Naomi's House, and a particular woman's story of healing through Naomi's House, so that you'll get a bigger vision for what it is, and talk to you about the project, and then encourage people to give throughout the course of Advent, for the 4 weeks of Advent. And then on Christmas Eve, all the offering, every dime that comes in, digitally or in person, will go toward Naomi's House. So hopefully throughout that 4 weeks, and then on Christmas Eve, we'll have raised that $200,000 to bless them with what God's doing. So that's the project, and more to come. And I should make sure you understand, Serve the World is the is the category of partners we partner with locally and globally. And when we give toward a project like Naomi's house, what happens every time is that all the other boats rise. All the other ministries that we're partnering with and resourcing are resourced as well, because it's from our generosity. It happens through the generosity of God's people. So thank you in advance for all of that. Speaking of giving and finances, I want to turn it over to Abe Doncel. For those of you that are still hanging in there with us, good for you. There's a special prize at the end, so don't go away. Abe Doncel is going to give us a financial update for our church family.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephen. And I hope, if you're like me, I hope you just are as encouraged as I've been sitting here and hearing all that God is doing in and through his church here at Chapel Street. And that is in large part due to the generosity and the faithfulness of God's people here at Chapel Street as well. So I just want to take a few minutes. We've heard a lot of information already, but I think it is important just to share and update you on where we are on some of the financial metrics, as we are just extraordinarily blessed here at Chapel Street. As those of you may recall who were with us through the summer at our August family meeting, as well as our annual meeting in August, you were aware of just the extraordinary blessed position we were in over this course of this last year from a financial, from a giving, and from a generosity perspective, and all that's enabled us to do. So I wanted to just share at a high level. We're only 2 months into our current fiscal and ministry year, so we just wrapped up the month of October, which is the second month of our year. So I want to just give you a quick check-in on where we are to date with some of our giving, as well as some of our debt servicing as well, and then just share a few thoughts with you before we open up for some questions. So if we can look at the first slide here, you see where we are, just as some high-level financial highlights. Again, this is through the end of October, just a few days ago. Our general fund giving just through those 2 months was just under $920,000. So that's, again, just an extraordinary thank you to all of you for your faithful generosity during that time period. Again, I should comment here as well that this is just to our general fund giving. So as Bruce just highlighted, some of our designated or restricted funds like Serve the World, our Community Compassion or Benevolent Fund, those are distinct funds that are restricted or designated giving. So what I'm sharing here is just our overall general fund, which is essentially our operating fund from a day-to-day management of the church. So again, our giving there is just over that $919,000. It's just about $50,000 over what we had budgeted for, that much through the first 2 months. So we're blessed by that and looking for that's the God's continued provision. What's that?
150,000 over. Is that right?
Excuse me, 151,000. Yes, you're right. It's I couldn't see the number from here. So yes, 151,000.
I'm not good at math. That's 100,000 difference.
So yes, 151,000 over our budget for that year. Our expenses are running just a little bit under our projected budget, so we're about 70,000 under budget from an expense standpoint. That's a combination of just some, as Jeff alluded to, we have some staffing positions that we're in the final phase of bringing on board. So those positions have been open, as well as we continue to just operate as effectively and as efficiently as we can during this COVID season. And I want to just commend the staff, as I had before, for just their stewardship and their continued just focus on being thoughtful and prudent as we move forward during this season. The net of all that is as we finish last year and as we move into this next ministry year, we have just about $1.8 million in unrestricted funds available. Again, as I mentioned, those are the funds that we have available to us to run the church from salaries, expenses, facility costs, ministry costs, etc. To give you some context of that, that's roughly 5 months worth of our operating expenses. Now, historically, we've looked to keep ideally somewhere in about 3 to 4 months of operating expenses as a healthy margin. That had been our goal, and we've been working towards that. As we know, as an organization our size, that's just a strong financial place to be, is to have that reserve available. So as you see, we're a little bit over that, closing in on now more closer to 5 months, and we're working with the executive council and the senior leadership team. We know that during this COVID season, we've erred on the side of being a little more conservative and a little more cautious and building a little bit of a larger reserve just to in the face of the uncertainty. But we're also working currently in this season to look at how do we also begin to invest those funds wisely, both in our facilities and some capital improvements and things that'll help us do ministry better, as well as into the ministries themselves and other expenses that we have. So we're working to not only to keep a healthy reserve and margin for us, but also to invest those funds in kingdom work and continue to be faithful with the gifts that you've entrusted us with. Moving on, then, if we take a quick look at what that means as it relates to where we're currently as our current debt service. So if I get the next slide up, we'll give you a picture of our current debt information, again, through the end of October. We have two major loans that, again, we've covered in the past, and I'll highlight just briefly here. Our Growing to Serve / Mill Creek mortgage, that was the initial debt that was incurred for some of the expansion back in the 2013-14 calendar year when we did major improvements to the Kesslinger campus, to both the South Street campus, as well as took on the debt that was incurred from the acquisition or the merger of the Mill Creek facilities. That balance is just over $725,000 currently. You see our interest rate there, which is a strong interest rate in this season for a commercial loan of this type. So we're blessed to be in that position. And the maturity on that loan, if we were to pay just the minimum payment, would be paid in full in 2036. Just so you know, we are paying above the minimum payment on a regular basis. And should we be blessed to continue with that, we would pay that loan off in the 2028 time period. So we're thankful, and we continue to move effectively in managing that loan. If you put that back up, you look at our neighborhood impact loan. That was primarily for the construction of the Mill Creek campus, as well as some other improvements at other campuses in the 2015-16 time period. That loan is just over $1.8 million currently balanced. Similar interest rate, again, strong. And if you see, again, if we were to pay just the minimum, that would mature sometime in 2033. Again, we are paying above that, and we anticipate, again, being able to pay that off in the 2027, 2028 time period as well, based on your continued generosity. So you see the total of those two loans combined is just over $2.5 million. The cost of us carrying that debt on an annual basis is just under $380,000, which is roughly 6.5% to 7% of our annual fund giving. So a very healthy position to be in. I've shared in the past. Typically 10% or so is looked at as what's a healthy carrying cost for an organization of our size. So we're within that, and we continue to look for ways to continue to reduce and minimize, but believe we're in a strong position as we continue to service and be faithful, again, with the gifts and the generosity of God's people here at Chapel Street. So just wanted to provide that. One other just quick update, if we could, before we close and open up, as we approach the year-end time period of the calendar year and year-end giving and some of the implications of that. I've been asked a question by a few folks who have inquired regarding a very unique opportunity in this calendar year. One of the aspects of COVID to be aware of is you may have heard about something called the CARES Act. And if we could put up a slide, the CARES Act was passed by Congress early in the COVID season in March or April time period. And it did a number of things as provide immediate relief and some other aspects of it. But one aspect of the CARES Act that may be less known is a part of that provision was to encourage individuals across the United States, obviously, to increase their giving to charitable organizations during the season. And so the CARES Act enables folks to do that at a greater level than historically was allowed from some tax advantages. So if you move to the next slide, you'll just see at a high level some information here. We're going to put more of this information on our website as we approach the year end. But what the CARES Act enables folks to do is if you're so inclined to or like to, as you look at your year end giving, whether it's to Chapel Street or any charitable organization, to have an increased opportunity to give those funds and have those count at a higher level as it relates to your tax liability. So we're certainly not looking to give tax advice, but did want to make you aware of that unique opportunity because it does have to happen in this calendar year to take advantage of those. So encourage you to look at that more. Again, we'll put some information on the website that'll provide you some information on that as well. But just as I close, I just want to thank, again, all of you. I think it certainly has been a privilege as part of the leadership team to faithfully work through it and use the gifts that you so generously give. And I think it's important to recognize that through your giving, you are giving to the kingdom through the ministry of Chapel Street Church. And it's our privilege to be stewards of those funds as we look to administer those funds to advance the kingdom both here locally and, as we've heard from Bruce, will be as well. So thank you so much for that. And I'll turn that back over to Ken.
Okay. Thank you very much, Abe. We truly appreciate the level of transparency and integrity with which you and your team manage the financials. So you do a great job there, and we appreciate that. All right, it's time for questions, and hopefully you've been texting those in to the number you see here on your screen. And I want to invite you to continue to do that as we open up for questions. We also have a mic here in the room for those of you who can see right over here on my left, if you want to do that in person. I'm going to open up the question session by addressing what I presume will be one of the questions, and that is COVID. How are we doing with COVID? And first off, I want to start off by expressing gratitude, thanks, and just our just incredible work for the incredible work that our staff has done, our facility team has done in preparing and positioning the church to manage through COVID, cleaning surfaces, preparing for coming back into the facilities with proper separation and proper rules and controls around how we're bringing people into the building and positioning people. As I look across the room here, I can see everyone's wearing a mask. Everyone is properly socially distanced. Your chairs are far enough apart. You can see her up on stage. All of that because of the careful work and the diligent work that our staff has been doing, our facilities team has been doing to really manage and help us manage through this. I also want to say right off the bat, we still want you to engage with us, to participate, to be involved however you feel most comfortable. We absolutely love the opportunity to see you and be with you in person, but we also understand that that's not necessarily the ability for everyone, and we know that, you know, the times have not changed completely yet. There's still a lot of, I think, COVID things to happen in our future, so we've got a lot of things that we have to continue to think about, work on. I want you to know that almost every day the staff consults with government officials and experts, medical officials and experts, both here in our area, in the county, and around our state and nation, to make sure that we are doing the very best we can to protect all of you and care for all of you in this COVID season. As one who is in a number of those high-risk categories myself, I can tell you I feel very comfortable being here, being a part of the congregation, but also have enjoyed very much, Stetson, the online engagement and the support we get from our online services as well. So I know there might be a lot more questions on that, but I just wanted to say thank you to the staff, thank you to the facilities group doing a fantastic job managing our facilities and helping us manage through COVID, so thank you.
Let me add to that, to Ken's answer to his own question. It's not a value statement if you come in person or if you're online. What matters is that you stay connected to God and to the mission of God here at Chapel Street Church. That's what matters to us, and that's why online matters so much. Obviously, those of us who preach prefer a room with people in it than an empty room. And for many of us, being in person, I think, is a spiritual and emotional need that we have. I hear that from people regularly. But I just want all of you that maybe aren't ready or don't think it's right for you yet, we understand the key, stay connected to God and to each other, even if that's virtually right now. Don't give up on that as we move forward. So we are, and as Ken said, we are monitoring and talking on a daily basis about what the best course of action is. I have said to our staff, we closed our facilities out of care and love for our neighbors, and we've reopened out of care and love for our church family. And so we're trusting God with the future and what comes next. So, sorry.
No, good. So, John, over to you. What questions can we answer?
Yes. Well, first of all, if anybody's in the room, if you'd like to ask some questions, you come up to the microphone, socially distanced, of course.
From the microphone?
To the.
The microphone is a proper 6 feet away from.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Speaking of the microphone, properly distanced from each other. We do have a few questions. The first one for Pastor Jeff about your accountability structure. The question is: the pastoral advisory team is made up of men. Would or could women serve on that team?
The Pastoral Relations Committee?
Pastoral Relations Committee, yeah.
I don't think there's anything in our constitution or bylaws that would prohibit that. I think that more because of some of the questions that are asked.
Yeah.
It's,
I'm going to steal that one
Please,
if you don't mind.
please.
Yeah, the Pastoral Relations Committee is intended to ask tough questions and very personal questions. And I hope that you can appreciate that some of those questions are very, very personal. And we want Jeff to feel the freedom and the openness to be able to answer them with full disclosure because it is very important to us. And as you would suspect, there's all kinds of areas that we have to pursue, and we do pursue. So
that sounded interesting, the way you put that.
Yeah.
Maybe you should explain that. There's all kinds of areas that you have to pursue.
Well, I don't mean have to in terms of we believe there's issues. I believe what I mean by that is given the array of areas that could impact Jeff and his ability to serve, we pursue all of those areas.
That's right.
We're very happy to report that we have very high confidence that Jeff is on the right track, as he's spiritually in the right place, and actually those meetings become, I think, good for all of us because it reminds us again how fragile it can be and how important it is for Jeff to keep all these issues and maybe temptations in mind as he continues to serve. And we very much appreciate that he does do that. He's very humble, and he very much seeks to make sure that he's in the right place to be able to serve in the way that he does. But again, the reason why we don't currently have women on that board is because of the level of sensitivity in terms of the questions that we're asking.
If behind the question is, do women get to speak into my leadership, the answer to that is yes. Women on our executive council, women on our staff. And so that is happening, but in that committee, no.
Question for Pastor Sterling at Mill Creek. How are you communicating the Mill Creek events to the neighborhood specifically?
So that's a great question. The answer is threefold. First and foremost, our primary method of invitation, I would say, is from our people, meaning relationships that they have with their neighbors, their coworkers, their friends. Inviting them to join them at events like Live Nativity is always our first and foremost desire, because there's built-in relationship there. In addition to that, though, we do seek to invite our immediate neighborhoods personally. And one of the ways that we're doing that we've done that in the past and that we're doing that for Live Nativity, is we actually canvass the neighborhood and put door hanger invitations on everyone's home that lives in the Mill Creek neighborhood, and actually some other surrounding neighborhoods over by Batavia High School, on McKee in Batavia and Tanglewood, other local neighborhoods as well. So people actually get in hand a invitation to that. And then thirdly, and this is kind of the greatest scope as far as involvement is, or the invitation going out, is through social media. Stetson and Marcy can make targeted ads that have a radius around the Mill Creek campus. We're participants on the Mill Creek neighborhood Facebook page. All of that allows us to get the invitation out to the people in the neighborhood, to invite them, to get them to sign up. It just went live last week on our website. So we emailed the entire Mill Creek congregation and made them aware so that they can start posting and inviting their own friends. But in addition to that, the Mill Creek neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods are going to start seeing it on social media. And then we just do some very traditional things as well, like signage and that sort of thing. So as people drive by, they just see, hey, something's happening here, something's coming, and we'd love to have you involved in that. So it's kind of a multifaceted sort of approach that. But anytime any of you can say, hey, this is happening, I want to bring my neighbor, I want to bring my coworker, that is always our best method.
Okay. Another question. Could Pastor Brian's sermons at the traditional service be available online for viewing? I think it would help the many older people who cannot come out at this time to connect with their campus pastor online. As much as we all love hearing Pastor Jeff preach.
Okay, that's a I keep thinking I'm off. That's a really good question, and it speaks to not only just South Street, but also Mill Creek and the future North Aurora. So when we moved to an online-only service, we decided we're going to keep one online presence. It'd be confusing for Stetson, I think, to monitor numerous services online. We do have a traditional service available to those that like it, but our primary thing with streaming is one service with one preacher, and then each campus, the sermon is recorded and is available for those who attend that campus to hear in two places, on our app, and it's actually on our YouTube channel. You can go and research by name the campus and find them there. Is that correct? I have that right? So you can, if you're a South Street or a Mill Creek attender, and you're tired of hearing me, which I understand, my kids can relate, that you could go and search in the church app for your campus and listen to Pastor Brian, or you could go on the YouTube channel and just type in the Chapel Street Church Mill Creek, and you'll see that sermon there. So,
Okay, Abe, but I think this one is for you. Do we still have a handicap entrance at the South Street campus?
We do still have a handicap entrance at the South Street. It is the same ramp area. There is a lot of construction going on back there currently, so it's limited, but there will be when construction is done and we are back open. We will have that campus, that facility will still, or that ramp will still be there. We have not taken that out, and that'll be part of both the new entrance or both the new entryway for Shepherd's Heart area. That ramp will be available for Shepherd's Heart guests and clients to come into, as well as for our traditional attendees to be part of that as well, so that the ramp in the back there will continue to be available for handicap access.
Okay. The last question I have right now is, before we acquired the fourth campus, I believe there was a Spanish-speaking congregation worshiping there. If that's so, how will this group be included as we go forward?
That refers back to some conversations we had before we voted. Cornerstone Community Baptist Church, which was the former organization that no longer exists that met in that facility, did have a Spanish-speaking congregation that met in a facility for a time. That congregation stopped meeting there prior to COVID and before we had those conversations. So they are not part of that church family, and we're not meeting there before we ever took possession of the property. So that doesn't mean we wouldn't have a Spanish-speaking service there in the future at some point. It doesn't mean some of those people wouldn't be welcome. Of course they would. But if the specific question is there a congregation meeting there that we have to accommodate, the answer to that is no.
Well, good. That concludes our questions from the text. Are there any questions in the room?
Bueller? Bueller? Anyone? Anyone? The Magna Carta.
Okay.
Yes, context.
All right. Hey, thank you again so much to everyone who participated today, who joined us. Again, it's very important to make sure that you are fully aware and engaged in all the activities of the church, as many as you can participate in. And we just want to make sure that you're fully aware of all those opportunities. We want you to be fully aware of where we're headed as a church. We want to be fully transparent with our financials. We just want you to be fully aware. And we also want to hear from you. So aside from this meeting, we do want to invite you to send us your questions, to engage. Certainly there's a number of opportunities, as Stetson mentioned, online to give us feedback and your comments. But we also just want to hear from you. If there are suggestions or if there are questions, please don't hesitate to email in, write in, call in, however you feel best that you can get us that information, because it is important to us to hear from you. So with that, I'll say thank you again, and I'll ask Pastor Jeff to close us in prayer.
Let's pray together. Father God, there's a lot of details contained in these comments and questions that we've been discussing, and we recognize that you are at the center of it all. We're so profoundly grateful for your provision for us. Not just your financial provision for our church and your provision for our facilities and our plans and strategies, but beyond it all, God, your provision of grace through your Son, Jesus. That you provided a way for us to be in relationship with you, to bring us into your family, to give us places in your kingdom, to adopt us as your sons and daughters. Thank you for that remarkable, inexpressible truth. And we recognize that all of our plans are to make that central truth known, and so we submit them to you. We thank you for the way you have allowed us to expand, and we pray for more of that for your sake, not for our own glory, not for our own reputation, Lord, but for your sake and your glory. We lay these things at your feet and give you great praise, Lord Jesus, in your name. Amen.
Amen. Go enjoy the outside. It's beautiful out there. And you can take your mask off when you leave the building.